Alright, in today's video I'm going to show how to move a flow to a solution. So take Power Automate flow, put it into a solution in the Power Platform. Before we get started, just want to throw a few disclaimers out there. First off, I am not an expert on this topic. There is a lot more to to solutions in the Power Platform than what I'm going to go through here today. So basically, this is just an introductory, and the way I'm using solutions in particular is specific to what I need out of solution, which is really a way to make flows portable or transportable from one person to another. There are a lot of variances that you'll run into, and in the time I've been using solutions, I found that different types of flows, whether they're automated or instant or schedule flows, and how they're deployed, there are some differences in how you need to move them to a solution, or things that you need to change when moving them to a solution. So there are a lot of ins and outs here. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them, so just know that I'm sort of showing you the basics here. It's up to you to get in there and figure out how to make things work for yourself. All right, so why would we want to move a flow to a solution? As I mentioned, I use solutions in a particular way that is not necessarily in line with what they're supposed to be used for, but basically I use them to be able to change the owner of a flow. So I've started doing this as I was developing a set of flows for a client department in my organization, and I needed to be able to hand them off to somebody in that department to manage going forward, because I'm not part of that department. I needed to be able to hand these flows off to them. It's also really useful, or I should say solutions are also useful, because a single solution can contain many different flows. So if those flows work together, so for example, in this particular use case, it was, there was one instant flow that people were using to create items in a list, and then another flow, an automated flow that ran as each of those items was created. So by putting them together into one flow, I can essentially hand off that solution, or in the solution hand off both of the flows to the new owners, but know that they'll be kept together, so that if one of them needs to be updated, chances are the other one also needs to be updated. It makes it easier to get to them. Now, sort of bigger picture, Microsoft is at some point in the near future. Right now it's late November 2024, but in early 2025, when you create new flows in Power Automate, they're automatically going to be created in solutions. In fact, if you use any of the list templates or library templates that create Power Automate flows, you'll notice that those are being created, those flows get created inside of solutions. So it is important it's good to know what solutions are, so that when that changes happen, or when that change happens, you won't be caught off guard. You'll be ahead of the curve. Also, if in the future you want to actually do proper lifecycle management, or ALM, in your Power Platform work, solutions are the fundamental component of that. In other words, to make if you want to be able to build a flow in a development environment, move it to a test environment for testing, and then move it to a production environment for use, then you need to know about solutions. So this is a good introduction to just get your feet wet a little bit. There are a few differences just to know about as you're going through this process. First off, the flows you're probably used to building outside of solutions use what I'm calling direct connections. In other words, I build a flow that uses SharePoint. I set up or create that SharePoint connection for the current user, and that's the connection used in the flow. Inside of a solution, flows use connection references. So basically, it's sort of a placeholder, and this is really what makes those flows portable, because as you move them from one environment to another, that connection reference can be updated to the current environment. So when you take a non-solution flow and move it into a solution, you'll need to create connection references, or if it's after you've created the first set of connection references, you don't need to create them again inside that solution. You would just update any additional flows you move to use those existing connections, but you'll need to create them. Also, the ID of the flow is going to change when you move it to a solution. So depending on what type of flow it is, if it's an automated flow that runs when a form is submitted, this doesn't matter. But if it's something like an instant flow, the one I'm using is running using the for a selected item in SharePoint. If I were using some column formatting in SharePoint to initiate that flow, then I need to update the ID that's in that formatting code to point to the new ID in the solution. Just keep that in mind if you're using instant flows. All right, now that we have the preliminary stuff out of the way, the steps that we're going to go through, we're going to create a solution, we're going to create a publisher. Now I'll link in the description to some info on publishers and solutions in general. So use that as your guide as you decide if you're going to create a new publisher or use an existing one. But I'm going to show you how to create a new one. We're going to bring the flow in there, and then we're going to update the connections, creating references as needed. All right, so this is the flow that I have. It's a very simple flow that it's run on the, as I said, for a selected item in SharePoint, and it's just getting the item. So trigger, action, that's it. Your flow is probably going to be a little more fancy, but this is the list that it's running with. So if I click on the three dots and go to automate and wait a moment here, we'll see there's press releases get item. I can run that flow, and I haven't run this one yet, so I need to basically sign in and agree to those. That's all good. So now the flow is run. So go back here. There's that run, and it succeeded because, hey, all it's doing is getting the item. Exciting, I know. So now I'm going to go over, and just to kind of keep things in perspective, I'm going to open the solutions in a new tab, and I'm going to create a new solution here. Now, taking a step back at the big picture, this is for the public relations department, and there are going to be other flows relating to this. So I'm going to create a solution called public relations flows. How you create your solutions could be more specific, less specific. I will say you don't want to bundle too much into one solution, but like one solution per SharePoint site might be a good model to follow if they're primarily SharePoint connected flows. But again, use whatever makes sense to you. So I'm going to click New Solution and call this Public Relations Flows. And then the publisher, you'll note that there's always going to be this, one or more of these CDS default publishers or default publisher for your org. You can use one of those if you like. I prefer to create a new publisher, so I'm going to call this Public Relations, again, because I want to kind of have all of these public relations flows bundled together there. So call this Public Relations, and then the prefix, this is what's going to be used for those connection references and other objects. I'm just going to use pubrel. Easy, simple. Basically, it needs to be between 2 and 8 characters. So hit save. And this part's a little weird, so basically I need to close this, and now I can select that publisher, public relations, and click create. So now we have our solution. So far, so good. Now what I need to do is bring that flow in. So I'm going to click Add Existing, and this is where we can bring in, if you have a Power Apps Canvas app, you can bring that in, but I'm going to Automation and selecting Cloud Flow. And then you'll want to select this thing that says Outside Dataverse, which is where most of your flows, in fact, probably all of your flows are going to be until you start moving them into solutions. So then we'll see there's my press releases get item. I'll select that and click add, and it's going to add that solution into the flow. I'm sorry, add that flow into the solution. And it'll take a moment or two to chug on through. And let me just refresh the page so that we see it there. And go into our public relations solution again. And there we go. So here we'll see there is the flow, and here is a connection reference. So you'll see type is connection reference. So in this case, it created it for me. I've also seen cases where it doesn't. So that's why I said you might need to create connection references. In this case, it did, so I'm pretty much okay. Now, if we open up the item, or open up the flow rather, and edit it, you may notice, and this is, again, sometimes I've had to do this, sometimes I've not, but basically in the flow, so it did update it to use the connection reference, which is good. So we should be just fine here. Again, just check this. It's using connection reference. All right, so we'll hit save. Just to be sure everything is working as expected, I'm going to go over and run this flow again on the same item. So click the three dots and automate and get item. And because it is running in a new flow, well, actually no, it didn't prompt me, so I can just run the flow because it's already run. If I go and look at the run history, there we'll see it succeeded. So that pretty much is it. Now the next step, as I said, if I wanted to change the owner of this flow, which I'll save for another video, but basically this is where this set primary owner. You will see this in non-solution flows, but you'll also note that when you click it, it's sort of grayed out that you can't remove the primary owner. But in a solution flow, I can add a new owner here and hand it off to them. So that's just, again, we'll do that in another video. This was just the first step of getting that flow into a solution. So that then once it's there, you can leverage other capabilities of solutions. So hopefully this was useful to you. If you, as I said, there are some ins and outs, so give it a try, and understand that you might need to tweak what I showed a little bit to make it work for your particular situation. So hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to leave a comment or like down below, and have a great day.